What happens when you stop chasing her? You spend months, maybe years, trying to keep her interested. You text first, you plan the dates, you check in when she goes quiet, you adjust your schedule so you can see her. You explain yourself when she seems distant. You try to fix every small problem before it becomes a big one. And somewhere along the way, the relationship stops feeling balanced. It starts feeling like work that only one person is doing. Most men who reach this point already know something is wrong. They feel it in their chest when the messages go unanswered for hours. They feel it when they wait for her reply before making plans for the evening. They feel it when their mood depends on whether she seems happy with them that day. Yet they keep chasing. They keep offering more attention, more effort, more reassurance, because the alternative feels worse. The alternative feels like losing her. But what actually happens when a man finally stops? Not the version where he pretends to stop while secretly checking her social media every hour. Not the version where he disappears for 3 days and then comes back with an apology. The real version. The one where he decides that his peace, his time, and his self-respect are no longer for sale. The one where he steps back completely and lets the silence stay silent. The first thing that usually happens is internal. The noise in his head gets louder before it gets quieter. For a while, he keeps replaying conversations. He wonders if he should have said something differently. He wonders if she is already talking to someone else. He feels the urge to reach out, just to end the discomfort. That urge is powerful because it has been trained for a long time. Every time he used to text her and receive a reply, his brain got a small reward. Every time she smiled at him or agreed to see him, the reward grew. The pattern became automatic. Stopping the pattern creates withdrawal. It is not dramatic, but it is real. The mind looks for the next hit of attention, the same way it looks for any other familiar comfort. This is where many men fail. They mistake the discomfort for proof that they made a mistake. They interpret the emptiness as evidence that they need her more than they thought. So they go back. They send the message. They restart the cycle. And the lesson never arrives. If a man stays with the discomfort long enough, something else begins to appear. He starts noticing how much of his day used to revolve around her responses. He sees how often he delayed decisions because he was waiting to see if she would be free. He realizes how much mental energy went into reading her tone, guessing her mood, and adjusting his own behavior to match it. That energy does not disappear when he stops chasing. It simply becomes available again. At first it feels strange. Later it feels like breathing room. Meanwhile, something often shifts on the other side as well. When a woman has grown used to consistent pursuit, the sudden absence of it can register as a change in the emotional climate. She may not consciously analyze it at first. She may simply notice that the usual messages are missing. The usual invitations are gone. The man who used to fill the quiet spaces is no longer filling them. Depending on the relationship and her own attachment patterns, different reactions become possible. Some women feel relief. The pressure of constant attention can become heavy over time, even if it once felt flattering. When that pressure lifts, she may experience more space to think about what she actually wants. Other women feel confusion. The pattern they relied on has changed, and the mind naturally looks for explanations. Was he offended? Is he busy? Is he interested in someone else? Curiosity can rise. In some cases, that curiosity leads to contact. In other cases, it leads to quiet observation. And in still other cases, it leads to nothing at all. She moves on without much drama. It is important to say this clearly. Stopping the chase does not force anyone to return. It does not create an automatic desire. It does not guarantee a message, a call, or a sudden realization that she misses him. Anyone who promises those results is selling a fantasy. Human beings respond in many different ways. Some people only value what they have to work for. Others value consistency and feel safer when the other person stays close. Some people are already halfway out the door and simply needed less resistance to leave completely. The outcome depends on the specific history, the emotional investment on both sides, and the individual personalities involved. What the man gains, regardless of her response, is information. He learns whether the connection could survive without constant maintenance from his side. He learns whether she was interested in him or in the feeling of being pursued. He learns how much of his own stability he had outsourced to another person's attention. That knowledge is valuable even when it is painful. There is a deeper layer that often gets ignored. Chasing is rarely only about the woman in front of him. It is frequently about an older pattern. Many men grow up learning that affection has to be earned through performance. They learn that being quiet or independent risks being overlooked. They learn that if they do not keep proving their value, someone more interesting will take their place. When that belief sits underneath a relationship, every moment of distance feels like a threat. The man does not simply want her company. He needs the reassurance that he is still chosen. The chase becomes a way to keep proving he is worthy of being chosen. When he stops, he is not only testing the relationship, he is testing that belief. He is asking, without words, whether he can still feel solid, without external confirmation. The answer does not arrive immediately. It arrives in small moments. He finishes a day without checking his phone for her name and notices that the sky did not fall. He makes plans with friends and enjoys them without wondering whether she would have preferred something else. He wakes up and feels the same about himself whether or not she has contacted him. Those moments accumulate. They rebuild a quieter kind of confidence. This process can expose something uncomfortable. Some men discover that they were more attached to the idea of being needed than to the actual person. Others discover that the relationship had become a substitute for purpose. When the attention stops flowing, the emptiness that remains is not always about her. Sometimes it is about the absence of direction in the man's own life. Work that does not challenge him. Friendships that stay surface level. Habits that fill time but do not build anything. The chase can hide all of that for a while. Stopping removes the distraction. In the weeks that follow a real withdrawal of pursuit, the social dynamic often changes in subtle ways. Mutual friends may notice the shift. Shared spaces may feel different. If the two people still see each other in group settings, the man who no longer chases tends to carry a different energy. He is less available for emotional labor. He does not fill silences with questions about her day. He does not offer unsolicited solutions. He simply exists in the same room with less investment in the outcome. That change can be noticeable. Some people interpret it as coldness. Others interpret it as strength. The interpretation belongs to them. The man's responsibility is only to stay consistent with the decision he made. Consistency is harder than the decision itself. The mind will generate reasons to break the silence. Maybe she is waiting for him to make the first move again. Maybe she is testing him. Maybe a short message would clear the air. Each of those thoughts carries a quiet invitation to return to the old pattern. The man who wants to grow has to treat those thoughts as information rather than instructions. He can notice them without obeying them. Over time, the frequency of the thoughts decreases. The emotional charge decreases with them. One of the more interesting things that can happen is a change in how the man evaluates future interactions. When he is no longer chasing, he becomes freer to observe. He can see whether she initiates contact. He can see whether the contact is genuine or whether it only appears when she needs something. He can notice the quality of the conversations that do occur. Does she ask about his life, or does she mainly talk about her own? Does she make concrete plans, or does she keep things vague? These observations are easier when he is not trying to manage her reactions. Detachment creates clearer vision. This clarity is useful even if the relationship ends. It trains the ability to see patterns instead of stories. The story might say that she was the one who got away. The pattern might show that the connection was uneven from the beginning. The story might say that he ruined everything by pulling back. The pattern might show that the connection only existed while he was supplying all the effort. Seeing the pattern protects him from repeating the same imbalance with the next person. There is also a physical dimension that rarely gets discussed. Constant low-level anxiety about another person's availability affects sleep, appetite, and concentration. The body stays slightly activated, waiting for the next message or the next sign of approval. When the chasing stops and the waiting stops with it, the nervous system eventually settles. The man may notice that he is less irritable. He may find it easier to focus on work or training. He may sleep more deeply. These changes are not dramatic, but they accumulate into a different baseline of calm. Some men worry that stopping the chase will make them appear indifferent or arrogant. That fear usually comes from confusing self-respect with performance. Real indifference is rare and usually temporary. What looks like indifference from the outside is often simply the absence of neediness. A man who is no longer trying to extract reassurance does not need to perform warmth or distance. He can respond when contact feels natural and remain quiet when it does not. That neutrality is frequently more attractive than either pursuit or deliberate coldness. But attraction is not the point. The point is internal alignment. If contact does resume, the quality of that contact tends to reveal more than the quantity. A conversation that begins because both people genuinely want to talk feels different from a conversation that begins because one person could no longer tolerate the silence. The man who has stopped chasing is in a better position to feel the difference. He is less likely to inflate a polite message into a declaration of renewed interest. He is less likely to abandon his own standards the moment attention returns. This is where many men still make mistakes. They interpret any renewed contact as proof that the strategy worked. They rush back into the old role of pursuer, only with more intensity this time. The temporary distance becomes a tool rather than a genuine change in posture. When that happens, the underlying dynamic rarely improves for long. The woman may enjoy the renewed pursuit for a while, but the imbalance remains. The man has only demonstrated that he can withhold attention temporarily, not that he has built a life that does not require her validation. The more lasting change happens when the man uses the space to strengthen other areas of his life. He trains consistently. He finishes projects that had been sitting unfinished. He spends time with people who do not require emotional management. He develops interests that exist independently of any romantic outcome. These activities are not distractions. They are evidence that his value is not concentrated in one relationship. When a person has multiple sources of meaning, the loss or distance of any single person becomes more manageable. Psychology has long observed that people tend to value what is scarce more than what is abundant. Attention that is always available can eventually be taken for granted. Attention that is selective tends to carry more weight. This principle is not a trick to deploy against another person. It is simply a description of how human attention works. When a man stops flooding someone with his availability, he is not manipulating her. He is restoring a more realistic distribution of his own resources. Whether she responds by valuing him more or by moving on is her decision. His decision is to stop treating his attention as an unlimited resource that must be given away to keep someone close. Another common misunderstanding is the idea that stopping the chase is the same as becoming passive. Passivity would mean abandoning all standards and accepting whatever happens. Stopping the chase is closer to the opposite. It requires active choices. The choice to notice the urge to reach out and then not act on it. The choice to invest energy elsewhere. The choice to maintain boundaries even when those boundaries create temporary loneliness. Passivity is easy. Self-respect requires effort. Loneliness itself deserves honest treatment. When a man has centered much of his emotional life around one person, removing that center creates a gap. The gap can feel sharp. Filling it too quickly with another relationship or with constant social activity often recreates the same pattern under a different name. Sitting with the gap for a period of time allows the man to learn what the loneliness is actually pointing toward. Sometimes it points toward a genuine desire for partnership. Sometimes it points toward an inability to be alone without anxiety. Distinguishing between the two is useful. A desire for partnership can be healthy. An inability to tolerate solitude usually is not. Over a longer period, men who successfully stop chasing often report a shift in how they enter new relationships. They move more slowly. They observe more carefully. They are less willing to overlook early signs of imbalance. They are more willing to walk away when the cost of staying begins to exceed the value of the connection. These changes do not make them colder. They make them more selective. Selectivity protects both people from prolonged mismatch. It is also worth noting that some relationships improve after the chasing ends. The woman may appreciate the reduced pressure. Conversations may become more equal. Plans may feel more mutual. When that happens, it is usually because both people were capable of a healthier dynamic and simply needed the old pattern interrupted. The interruption itself does not create the health. It only removes the obstacle that was preventing it. If the underlying capacity for mutual respect was never there, the relationship will not suddenly acquire it. The man who expects a specific outcome is still, in a subtle way, chasing. He has simply changed the method. The deeper work is to release the need for a particular result. He stops chasing not because he has calculated that it will bring her closer, but because continuing to chase was costing him something he is no longer willing to pay. That distinction matters. One version remains dependent on her response. The other version is independent of it. Independence of this kind is not isolation. A man can still enjoy company, still desire intimacy, still prefer partnership. The difference is that none of those preferences override his basic self-respect. He can want someone without needing them in order to feel complete. He can miss someone without collapsing. He can receive attention without clinging to it and lose attention without spiraling. These capacities are built through practice, and stopping the chase is one of the practices that builds them. There is a quiet strength that develops when a man realizes he can live without the constant feedback of another person's interest. That strength is not loud. It does not need to announce itself. It shows up in the way he carries himself in ordinary moments. He is less reactive. He is less willing to abandon his own plans. He is more willing to let silence remain silence. Other people often sense this change even if they cannot name it. Some are drawn to it. Some are unsettled by it. Neither reaction is his responsibility to manage. The most important result of stopping the chase is not what happens between him and her. It is what happens inside him. He discovers that his sense of worth does not have to rise and fall with someone else's availability. He learns that effort without reciprocity is not love. He learns that peace is more sustainable than the temporary relief of a reply. These lessons travel with him into every future relationship and into the long periods when he is not in one. Many men spend years believing that the right amount of effort will eventually produce the right emotional response from the other person. They treat relationships like projects that can be completed through persistence. Persistence is useful in many areas of life. In relationships, it can become a form of self-erasure if it is not matched by equal investment from the other side. Stopping the chase is the moment a man decides that his persistence will be directed toward his own growth rather than toward securing someone else's attention. That decision does not always feel empowering at first. Sometimes it feels like defeat. The mind can interpret withdrawal as failure, especially if the relationship ends afterward. But failure would be continuing a pattern that slowly empties him of self-respect. Ending that pattern is the opposite of failure, even when it is accompanied by loss. In the end, what happens when you stop chasing her is less about her and more about the version of yourself you decide to become. You become the man who no longer trades his peace for temporary closeness. You become the man who can sit with uncertainty without immediately trying to resolve it through contact. You become the man whose attention is valuable because it is no longer automatic. Whether she notices that change, whether she values it, whether she returns or disappears, is secondary. The primary change is internal, and it cannot be taken away by anyone else's decision. That is the real transformation. Not a clever strategy for winning someone back. Not a performance of indifference designed to create desire. A quiet, consistent refusal to abandon yourself in order to keep someone else. Once that refusal becomes solid, the need to chase dissolves on its own. What remains is a man who can love without losing himself, and who can walk away without collapsing. That man is rare. Most people will never meet him, because most men never do the work required to become him. The work begins the moment you decide that your attention is no longer something you have to give away in order to feel chosen.